All right, guys, we are now in our class time, so make sure you're paying attention, make sure you're taking notes. Remember, you need to turn in this Friday. We need to turn in our worksheet 2.2, 3.1, and 3.2, okay, along with the three reports that go with each one of those. So you'll have a report for each worksheet. Make sure you get that turned in. Make sure you get it done. So like that, you can have it ready by Friday. All right, so let me put my glasses back on. I can't see a thing. I am as blind as a bat. There we go. I can see you guys now. All right, so once again, we are in chapter 3, and we are talking about the physical characteristics of the oceans. Now, some of these things, or all of this actually, that we're going to see right now, we have already mentioned and looked at. So I'm just going to go through this quickly, and then we'll go on to our notes for today. All right, but first let's pray and we'll get started. Lord, thank you for the day. We pray now you help us to have a good class time, help us to learn. And we're thankful, Lord, for the beautiful creation that you have given us to enjoy. We pray you keep us safe. I pray for your health upon our lives and our families. And we thank you for everything you've done for us in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so characteristics of the ocean. We have mentioned several of these characteristics. You don't have to write this down. You already have this in your notes, okay? So we talked about the shoreline. We talked about the coast. Obviously, we talked about the beach. Who does not love the beach? I don't, because sand gets everywhere, and I don't like it. Anyway, all right, so we talked about harbors. And we talked about lagoons and bays as well. And so we saw several examples of a harbor. There's one that is a beautiful harbor. Hopefully one day when I win the lottery, I'll have one of those. And yeah, it'll be all mine. We'll see. I don't think that's going to happen. Let's continue. Then we talked about the lagoons. Lagoons are... as we saw in our definition, are shallow bodies of water separated from the ocean by a sandy ridge or reef or an island. And so that is one beautiful lagoon right there. We talked about a fjord, however you want to pronounce it. Narrow U-shaped arms of the ocean that reach deep inland. And I mentioned to you that the beautiful country of Norway is famous for these things. People will take river cruises just to go see these beautiful creations of God. Norway is full of these things. And so if you ever want to go to Scandinavia, you must go see one of these fjords, okay, or fjords. There's an example. That's my boat right there. I just loaned it to my friend for a few years so that he could get his business going. And anyway, that's my house right here, right there. That's my summer house. So if you guys ever want to take a vacation to Norway, let me know. We can arrange something. All right. There's another picture. That's me and my wife backpacking a few years ago. Yes, I know he's taller and he's white, and so is the lady, I believe. Yeah, she's white. So, yes, it's not us. All right, let's continue. We talked about estuaries or estuaries, whatever, however, anyway. We said that they form at mouths of rivers where the ocean water mixes with fresh water, okay? And so there are a lot of those, and you can always tell where the water meets because of the color of the darker color where the fresh water and the ocean water come together. If you look at pictures of the Amazon River down in South America, you could actually tell, I mean, you can tell from a good distance away where the seawater or the salt water from the Atlantic Ocean meets with the fresh water of the Amazon River. And so this happens a lot around the world. All right, so we talked also about the types of coasts. The types of coast, wave erosion, dune coast, landslide coast, and coral reef coasts, okay? Wave erosion, this is an example of it. We looked at this one as well. That is a beautiful picture. The wave erosion, you can see that, that rock right there, how the constant hitting of the waves eroded into that rock and created that beautiful scenery there. Then we have dune coast. Then we have landslide coasts. Mountains, and all of a sudden just drop right into, with a certain slope, they drop right into the ocean. And then we have the coral reef coasts, which is, to me, I think it's just the best looking one. All right, so we already saw all of this. Now, I believe this is where we left off. If you do not have these notes, I believe you can start copying them right here. So the continental margin, we are talking about physical characteristics of the ocean. All right, so the continental margin is the wide area between the coast and the deep sea floor. And I mentioned to you that it's made up of 4 parts, and we're going to look at each one throughout this class. First, we have the continental shelf, the continental slope, the continental rise, and the abyssal plain. Okay. Now, I believe I gave you guys these notes. Okay. And so let's continue. So 4 parts of the continental margin. And by the way, if you are having a hard time keeping up with my beautiful self, just hit the pause button, write down the information, and then we can continue, okay? So, all right, so here's an example of these 4 parts as seen in this illustration. The continental shelf goes from the beach right to this area right here, okay? Then we have the continental slope, which is just the part where obviously you're just sloping down into the ocean. Then we have the continental rise, which is where the abyssal plain starts going upward into the continental slope and then eventually into the continental shelf. Okay, so those are the 4 parts of the continental margin. Again, we're looking at physical features of the ocean. Here's another one that'll just show it to you a little bit better. We're going to look at each one of these in particular, or each one individually, so that you know what each one of these features entails. All right, so let's talk about the continental margin. All right, so these notes are the ones that you will need to start writing, okay? The continental margin. It is known as, or it is the submerged land adjacent to a continent. And it extends from the coast to a point at which the slope increases rapidly. All right, and so this here is a picture of the continental shelf of North America, especially the northeastern part of the United States. All right, and so you can tell right here we have New York City, and then you have the continental shelf goes out several miles into the ocean, and then we have the continental slope that starts going down into the ocean. Okay, typically the continental shelf is 10 miles or more out to sea. Now, however, the width of the continental shelf can vary from 1 mile in some places to, in some areas out in the Pacific Ocean, up to 750 miles. But the average is about 10 miles or so, okay? In some areas of the Pacific, you can go up to 750 miles and you are still in the continental shelf in these in these parts of the ocean. Also in the Arctic region, in the southern part of the Pacific Ocean, there are also the continental shell is very, very wide. The area of seabed around, it is known as the area of seabed around a large landmass where the sea is relatively shallow compared with the open ocean. Okay, and so this just gives you an idea of what the continental shell is. All right, so it is the submerged land adjacent to a continent. All right, you're done copying? Great. Let's continue. Now we have the continental slope. The continental slope, and once again, you see the shell break, it says here, but this is the continental shell here. Then it breaks and it just starts downward slope. In some places it goes down very, very rapidly. In others it does not. But it is defined as the true edge or the side of the continent. The continental slope can drop from around 650 feet in some places, and in others down, it goes down into, can go down into the ocean at about a 2 1/4 of a mile in depth. Okay, and so the continental slope. All right, so 4 parts of the continental margin. Once again, we have the continental shelf, the continental slope, the continental rise, and we're not going to talk much about the rise. Like I said, it's just the part where the abyssal plain starts heading upward into the slope, and then once you get up that slope, you get into the shell, and then the ocean there kind of levels out when it comes to its depth. All right, let's continue. Here's another picture of this just to help you get this in your mind a little bit. All right, continental shelf over there, continental slope, and then we have the continental rise down here. And then once you get past the continental rise, then you get into the abyssal plain. Okay, and beyond the continental margin is where you will have the features of the ocean deep. We'll have the basins, the seamounts, ridges, the trenches. Oceanographers in studies that have been made know of at least 50 areas of the ocean that are greater than 19,000 feet below sea level. And so that's where the abyssal plain will be. Okay, it's just as the name says, it's a plain. It's the flat part of the ocean. Some of these places that the oceanographers have identified are almost 3.5 miles straight down, and once you get down there, it's all flat. These are known as deep ocean basins. Although unseen because they are underwater, such basins or abyssal plains make up more than 1/2 of the Earth's surface. So just write that down next to abyssal plain. Just write down abyssal plain somewhere and write down the abyssal plain makes up more than 1/2 of the Earth's surface. And so it is amazing to think, we think that most of the earth is out here where we live and where we do all the things that we do, live our lives. But the fact is that it is below the oceans, or below the waters of the oceans, where most of the Earth's land is located. All right. The abyssal plains they begin at the base of the continental slopes and extend flatter than anyone has ever seen on land, mile after mile. And so there is a lot of the areas in the ocean that we have not explored, and that it will take years to explore. All right. So once again, the continental margin made up of 4 areas: the continental shelf, the continental slope, the continental rise, and the abyssal plain. Okay, the abyssal plain. All right, let's continue. Now, within that abyssal plain, we have several other physical characteristics that belong to the ocean. All right, one of them is the trenches. The trenches. Now, what are the trenches? They are steep sides that fall sharply to the ocean floor. They are known as the deepest areas of the oceans, and all of them have been formed from subduction between two oceanic plates. Okay, so make sure to copy this down. So down there in the continental margin, you will have, again, the continental shelf, the continental slope, the continental rise, and the abyssal plain. Within the abyssal plain, you'll have most of that area is flat, just like a plain, like if you were to go out into the Midwestern United States, it's just flat out there. Well, that's how it is in that part of the ocean. But it is interrupted. The abyssal plain is interrupted by several features, and one of them are these trenches that, as the definition here says, they are the deepest areas of the ocean. And as we saw at the beginning of our study, we said that the Marianas Trench out in southeastern Pacific is the deepest part of the ocean. All right, so let's look at some of these, a map that will just show you where these trenches are. Okay, this is a picture of and you see all the black lines that you see throughout the globe here are trenches that are the deepest trenches around the world. Okay, and so some of them are very, very well known. The Marianas Trench right here, the Mindanao Trench as well, the Peru-Chile Trench, which is one of the closest ones to us. Then you have two minor ones, the Puerto Rico Trench and the Mid-America Trench. And one that belongs to the United States is up in Alaska, the Aleutian Trench. Again, areas of the world that these trenches that interrupt that flat land down in the bottom of the ocean. Okay, so if you want to go deep sea diving, this is the place to go. All right, if you want to go just see how deep you can get down into the ocean. Now, let's talk about, again, talking about trenches. Subduction. What is subduction? Well, subduction is the process where one oceanic plate slides under another plate. Okay? It works by density. The heavier plate slides under the lighter or less dense plate. And so the world has different plates that make up the bottom or the floor of the earth, and so the subduction process has to do with those plates. The long, narrow belt, and now when these two plates meet, like it says in our definition, the heavier plate would slide under, raising the lighter plate on top of it, or the less denser plate. Now when they meet, what happens is that yes, one goes under, the other one goes on top, but it forms a long, narrow belt in the ocean floor. And it is these areas of the ocean trenches that can be very dangerous. And this is where a lot of the earthquakes and tsunamis take place around the world. We mentioned in our last class while we were still in school that this area or the area around the Pacific Ocean is known as the Ring of Fire. And that is because around the entire area or most of the Pacific Ocean, you have plates where this is taking place. And so you'll have volcanoes that are formed under the waters of the ocean. You have these great and long, narrow ridges where you have a lot of friction that is going on between these plates. Some of these plates can be as long as 1,500 miles long, and very, very deep, several miles deep, and they can be as much as 70 miles wide. And so these areas, these subduction areas within the ocean are very important, and they figure a lot in how the oceans work. Okay. All right, so subduction, you need to remember that meaning, all right? So make sure you write it down. The process where one oceanic plate slides under another plate. All right, let's continue. This is just a picture to show you how this works. All right, so this area right here would be the subduction area. You have the continental shell, or this area here, which would be considered a plate, is going on top of the ocean plate, and this one is sliding under. And so this area here would be that ridge that forms, the trench that is formed within these two plates as they meet. All right, and so that area right there of the trench would be the area where you would have, in areas near it, would be the place where you would have a lot of mountain ranges. For example, down in Peru, down here in South America, well, beginning down in Chile, all the way up to Colombia, you have the Andes, the Andes Mountains. And that is a result of the subduction that is taking place between the South American plate and a smaller plate known as the Nazca plate. All right, one is going on top, the other one's going on the bottom, and then you have that long, beautiful mountain range down in South America. And so subduction areas. All right, here's another example of where these plates are. All right, so notice you have the South American plate here, the Nazca plate here, and you have the Andes Mountains here. Through Mexico and through Central America, you have the Sierra Madre mountain range, which basically covers most of Central America, and that is the Caribbean plate meeting with the Pacific plate. Okay, and so all around the world, this is what takes place. All right, and so this area right here, all the way around the Pacific Ocean, is known as the Ring of Fire, and we talked about that in a previous class. All right, now again, trenches. At least 5 trenches have been identified to be over 6 miles deep. All right, write this down now. Near the island of Guam is the famous Mariana Trench that we've already talked about. Located where the Pacific Plate descends under the leading edge of the Eurasian Plate, which would be the plate where the continent of Asia is located. This trench has been measured at over 36,000 feet. That is almost 7 miles deep, which I've mentioned before. In 1960, 2 brave men reached the Marianas Trench. It was a truly daring accomplishment. But in 1960 was the first time that Marianas Trench, the deepest part of the ocean as far as we know right now, was reached by man. Other extensive trench regions around the world include the South Sandwich Trade, or the South Sandwich Trench, which is between South America and Antarctica, which would be this area down here. All right, South Sandwich. Now, don't tell me you're hungry right now. All right, so we're going to stop about Stop talking about food. Also, you will find the Peru-Chile Trench and the Aleutian Trench, which is up in the Aleutian archipelago, which extends out of Alaska. All right, so that one would be up there, right up there. All right, great. So these areas, these trench areas, are very active with earthquakes, undersea volcanoes, and that when these earthquakes, when those plates shift at the same time, or they are rubbing one against another, there's that friction. Usually they result in tsunamis. Okay, and usually that happens in Southeast Pacific Ocean. All right, let's continue. So we have the trenches. All right, we're talking about characteristics under the water. Okay, under the or at the abyssal plain area of the margin of the continental margin. All right, let's continue. So we have also the oceanic ridges. What are these? Well, oceanic ridges are mountain ranges along the ocean floor. So we have trenches that go into the ocean floor, but then we also have the ridges, which are mountain ranges that extend upward up to the surface. The most well-known ridge is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, because it is located in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, hence the name. All right, now this ridge covers 1/3 of the ocean floor. So if we were to take that mountain ridge, if we would be able to pick it up out of the Atlantic Ocean and just put it on the surface of the earth, it would be longer than most of the, if not all, if I remember correctly, all of the mountain ranges that are on the surface of the earth. All of these ridges combined that are underneath the ocean or on the ocean floor extend for 52,000 miles underneath the surface of the earth. And so they form a chain, a mountain chain that stretches almost completely around the world. And so the Mid-Atlantic Ridge goes right through the country of Iceland. And when you go to Iceland, Iceland is one of the most active countries in the world. You have a lot of earthquakes. You have a lot of mountain ranges. You have a lot of glaciers. I mean, just a lot of things that are taking place in Iceland because this Mid-Atlantic Ridge goes right through it. And really, Iceland is part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. This is a picture of these mountain ranges that are found in the ocean floor. Like I said, the most well-known one is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. It extends and it meets up with the Southwest Indian Ridge, which goes around the Cape of Good Hope down in Africa, and it extends way up past Iceland and way up here and right next to Greenland. All right, but if you were to measure all of these mountain ridges, you're going to get about 52,000 miles of land being covered underneath the ocean floor. All right, so we have the trenches, then we have the oceanic ridges, and then we also have the hydrothermal vents. Now, what are hydrothermal vents? These are jets of black, toxic, mineral-rich water that comes from the ocean floor. The 660-degree Fahrenheit water, I mean, so this water is hot, okay, that is coming up out of the ocean floor, spews from rocky 66-foot tall chimneys. All right, so we're there's a picture right there. Okay, these things can be as tall as 60 66 feet tall, some even up to 70 feet tall. And they are called black smoker chimneys. And basically what happens is that seawater will seep down through the cracks of the ocean floor. And when it seeps in through there, it comes into contact with rocks that are heated by underground pockets of magma or lava or molten rock. And so when that seawater seeps into the ocean floor and it meets with that lava that's down there under the oceans, then they mix together and they kind of press upward and they create one of these little things right here. These fascinating vents have been found off the coast of Japan. There's several off of the coast of Louisiana, California, Oregon, and Washington. They are also found on the Juan de Fuca Ridge in the North Sea, which would be up there near Ireland, England, that area. Okay, and so hydrothermal vents. Seawater mixes with the molten pockets of magma or molten lava, and then that lava, once they react, they press upward, creating these bad boys right here. This is an example right here of how these things work. Okay, so seawater gets down into the cracks. Down here you have the magma. They have a reaction, and the reaction, what it does, it pushes up. You have all of that pressure building up, so it pushes up sort of like an underwater volcano, and then that will erupt into the water of the ocean, and then you will have something like that coming up out of the ocean floor. All right, so we're gonna leave it right here for now. So once again, let me just do a quick review here. We are talking about the physical features of the oceans. Okay, so we have the continental margin. All right, pay attention. Hey, I see you sleeping. Wake up. Continental margin. All right, so it's made up of how many parts? The continental margin has how many parts? No, not 5, 4. Come on, pay attention. All right. Continental shelf, the continental slope, the continental rise, and the abyssal plain. In the abyssal plain, we find 3 great features. We have the trenches, all right, that go down into the floor of the oceans, right? They disturb the abyssal plain. Right here is a trench right there. And then we also have not only the trenches, but we also have the oceanic ridges. All right, there's a picture of a map of the oceanic ridges around the world, and then we have the hydrothermal vents. All right, so all right, these are the notes for this class. For now, I want you guys to make sure that you take notes. If I was going too fast, just rewind. Copy down the notes, because your quiz, you'll have quizzes on this, and your quizzes are going to come from these notes. Okay, so remember, you are to do worksheet 2.2, worksheet 3.1, and worksheet 3.2, and it's due this Friday. All right, so it's been a pleasure, and nice to see you guys. So, well, it's nice for you guys to see me. And we will continue next video. We will be looking at, I believe we're going to be looking at chapter number 4. Okay, chapter number 4. So remember, read chapter number 3, do 3.1 and 3.2, and also 2.2 from the previous classes that we had here. All right, we miss you guys. God bless you. We love you, and I hope that you guys are not too bored at home. All right, have a good one.